I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. I will say this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. I will enter his gates with thanksgiving in my heart. I will enter his courts with praise. I will say this is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. He has made me glad. He has made me glad. I will rejoice, for he has made me glad. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know thus saith the Lord. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I prove him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. I'm so glad I learned to trust him, precious Jesus, Savior, friend, and I know that you are with me, will be with me to the end. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I prove him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I prove him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. There's not a one friend like the lowly Jesus, no, not one, no, not one, no one heal all our souls' diseases, no, not one, no, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. There's not an hour that he is not near us. No, not one. No, not one. No night so dark, but his love can cheer us. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. Jesus knows all about our struggles. He will guide till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. No, not one. No, not one. One more time. No, not one. No, not one. We gather here in Jesus' name. His love is burning in our hearts like living flame. For through the loving Son, the Father makes us one. Come take the bread, come drink the wine, come share the Lord. No one is a stranger here, everyone belongs. Finding our forgiveness here, we in turn forgive all wrongs. He joins us here, he breaks the bread. The Lord who pours the cup is risen from the dead. The Lord who loves the most is now our gracious host. Come take the bread, come drink the wine, come share the Lord. We are now a family of which the Lord is head. Though unseen, he meets us here in the breaking of the bread. We'll gather soon where angels sing. We'll see the glory of our Lord and coming King. And we anticipate the feast for which we wait. Come take the bread, come drink the wine, come share the Lord. Come take the bread, come drink the wine, come share the Lord. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to make, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to make, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I lift your name on high.
I turn my back and suddenly more children appear. Close my eyes and there are more children. Oh, a whole congregation of children. Good morning.
Good morning.
You guys were just trying to scare me, weren't you? I think everybody was boycotting this morning. We announced we're going to have a children's Sunday, so no children come. And finally 2 straggled in, and then 3 more. All right. And Peggy looks pretty childish this morning too, doesn't she? Doesn't she? She seems like pretty willing to be a child. Because I think we might have to have a few extra children. Although 5 is, I think we could work with that. Okay, my question to you kids is, how many of you go to school? 2? 3? There you go. Or preschool or something else? Well, all of you will in a few years. Today, I want you to think about what it would be like if Jesus were in your classroom. Sometimes there's a student in your class that maybe looks a little different than the rest of the kids. Maybe they have a different skin color. They have very dark skin, or their eyes are shaped differently, or they wear clothes that look kind of strange. Or maybe they have an accent that makes them kind of stand out from everybody else. And sometimes children avoid them because of those things. It can get even worse than that. Some mean kids might make fun of them or call them names. And if you try to be friends with them, they call you names. Has anybody ever run into that or seen that happen? Hopefully not, but maybe you have. I guarantee you sometime in your school life, you're going to run into this kind of thing. Well, I want to introduce you to a man that was treated that way, okay? He was different because he had a disease that was called leprosy. Does anybody know what leprosy is? Have you ever heard of it? Honestly, I was going to put a photo up here of somebody with leprosy, but it was so gross, I just didn't want to do it. It was too unpleasant.
Do it.
Yeah. The word that's translated leprosy in the Bible is several illnesses. The one that we would call leprosy today is actually a nerve disease, and it can cause rash on your skin. It can cause a numbness where people don't feel pain. It can cause people to lose fingers, ears. Some people with leprosy don't have a nose. Some of them have lost toes. I know one photo was really a sad one. A fellow in India, and he held up his hands, and one hand only has stubs for his fingers. But some other very common illnesses were contagious skin diseases. Now, there are a lot of diseases that are not contagious. Have you ever had poison ivy? Anybody ever? In fact, who here has had poison ivy?
My grandma.
Yeah. How many would like to get it again? Roger was the only one who raised his hand, but we understand, Roger. It's not fun, is it? It itches and it looks terrible. And if it's someplace where it shows, people sort of take a step back. Because actually, I understand it is contagious. I mean, you can move it to different parts of your body. And so you have to be very careful about it. Thankfully, it's easily treatable and it goes away fairly soon, but it's really unpleasant while you have it. Well, can you imagine going to school and having it like all over your face? I remember when I had chicken pox. I was sick, I felt sick, kind of feverish and stuff, but that wasn't the worst part. When I looked in the mirror, I thought I was looking at a monster. It's so horrible. These scabs all over my face. Yuck. Well, anyways, imagine what it was like for this guy to live. Because they also had some laws about people with leprosy and how they were to be treated. Because they didn't want anybody else to get it, these people had to stay away from everybody else. In fact, it depended how far you had to keep from other people depended on which way the wind was blowing. Now, why do you suppose that would make a difference? Anybody?
The smell.
Well, that's part of it. They didn't want any of those germs to blow down the wind and somebody else to get them. They thought it could be transferred. In some cultures, they thought it was evil spirits that caused these illnesses. And on top of that, you had to go around and you had to yell, "I'm unclean, stay away from me." Imagine if you had to go to school and every time you walked into the classroom, you had to say, "I'm unclean, stay away from me." That would not be fun. If that would have been me, I probably would have gone one time, and that would have been it. No more school for me. I'd have just kept to myself, locked up in my room. It was too embarrassing. So, I need a volunteer. Now it can be one of these 5 children, or it can be one of the other children here for a very special role. Is anybody willing to volunteer? You won't volunteer? Okay. Maddox, I want you to come here. I want you to look at your ring. I'm going to put a sign in your back. Also, you can take a very special role. Okay, there we go. Now let's let everybody see it. Okay, turn around this way. Turn around this way. Okay, everybody see that? Okay. Now, come on down this way. Come on. All the children. Come on, Brooklyn. Come on around. Come on up. All you guys. We're gonna make we need your help, Brooklyn. Come on, sweetie. I need a couple or 3 more children.
Come on.
Peggy? Wilma? Brenda? Any more children? I force these people to volunteer. Anybody want to willingly volunteer? Okay, Lisa. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to hold hands with everybody. No, not with Maddox. And draw in close. Okay. Okay, we're going to get very close to each other. We're going to talk. How do you think about that? Oh, it's got that person. Okay. Now, Max, how did that make you feel? Did you feel left out? Huh? I can tell the way you're, just the way you're standing and everything else. That wasn't fun, was it? Well, now I want you to think about what it's like to be a child who's different from different than everybody else in the classroom. And the kids, they all gather, they all know each other and you're talking, and that child is all alone by themselves. Wouldn't it make them feel left out? It would, wouldn't it? But we don't want Maddox to feel that way. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to do this. How does that sound? Let's do this again. Now, come on, Maddox. Now, I want you to be in the center, because doesn't everybody like Maddox? Isn't he a great guy? Man, he's our favorite guy. Yeah, he sure is. Does that feel better? It does, doesn't it? Thank you for helping. Okay, we can take our seats again. Now, I want you to think about what it would be like if Jesus were in your classroom. And we don't really have to guess, because we can see the story of a man that Jesus helped. And just like Maddox at first was pushed out, because he said he had leprosy, and then was included when his leprosy was gone. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 8, the first 3 verses. And can all of you children see this? I think most of you can read. Probably Brooklyn can't quite yet.
I can't.
Does somebody want to read it for us? Kyle, do you want to give it a try? I didn't prep you in advance. That's not fair, but you want to give it a try?
Sure.
Go for it.
Do I have to read the Matthew part?
No, you don't have to.
When he came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately, he was cured of
last time you're going to do that. Good job. Thank you very much. And, you know, surprise like that too, and you just step right up to it. That's great. Well, can you imagine what it was like to live as a leper back in that ancient culture? I mean, when this guy went home, could he hug his wife? No. He wasn't allowed to touch anybody, and they couldn't touch him. Could he hold his little baby in his arms? Nope. Could he hug his children? Nope. Could he come to church and sit next to somebody? No, he couldn't. Oh my. Think about the way people treat others when they want to push them away and exclude them. And I saw it growing up. What do they call people with glasses sometimes? Four eyes, right? Of course, I know sometimes people wear glasses with plain lenses just for fashion. So those of us who wear glasses should feel extra cool. And actually, we can actually see the chalkboard in the teacher. Or sometimes they call a person weirdo or loser. Is that fair? No. Why would they do that? Why would people call people names like that?
For attention.
Attention?
Because they don't got Jesus in their life.
Because they don't have Jesus in their life. Yeah. Jesus knew that he wanted to help this guy, but he also knew that if he touched him to heal him, then Jesus became like the leper, and people would have to stay away from him too. So that was pretty risky, wasn't it? And yet, can you see up here, what did Jesus do? He touched him. Now, could Jesus have healed this guy without touching him, just spoken? He couldn't. Why do you think he touched him? You got it. I hope everybody got to hear that. To know that he was loved. You know, all through Jesus' life on earth, he took risks for us. And the biggest risk, finally, was going to the cross. They tortured him. They executed him by driving spikes in his... Actually, it's called his hands, but what we understand the way they did it was they didn't put it in this part of the hand, they put it right here. There was a little gap in these two bones, and they would put the spike right there. Because if you put it in here, it'll just pull through from the weight of the body. So they put it right here, and it would catch those bones, and your hand bones would hold you up. And spikes through his feet. And usually the reason for that was because it took several days for people to die, and everybody would see them, and it was humiliating to them. Besides the fact that they suffered more and more and more every day. So Jesus, and we know what happened 3 days later, don't we? Can anybody tell me?
He rose from his grave.
He did. Thank you. He rose from the grave. But that's not something that happened all the time, was it? In fact, had a criminal who'd been executed ever been raised from the dead like that before? No, never. So Jesus went into something that had never been experienced before in order to pay for our sins. He took that big risk for us. Now, what lessened the risk was that God, his Father, is faithful and reliable and fulfilled his promise that he would raise him from the dead. But all the way through, Jesus took these risks. Actually, when Jesus said, Father, I'll go to earth, and walk among them and die on the cross for them. Wasn't that a risk? He left heaven and came to earth. There's so much about heaven that we don't understand, but there's so much we do. And we know that there are no tears, there's no suffering. There is pure joy and peace and fulfillment and accomplishment in heaven. So I like to think of heaven by what it does not have. Heaven does not have blisters on the bottom of your feet from walking. Blisters does not have fever that comes from getting the flu. Heaven does not have broken bones. Yes?
Heaven does not have glass in your feet.
It does not have glass in your feet. Yeah. You know, one day I was down at the beach this summer, and I was running over to jump in the lake, and suddenly it felt like somebody had taken a razor blade to the bottom of my foot. And when I got out, I sat down and I realized it was a big piece of shell from a zebra mussel. It was like a shard of glass that was in my foot. And it hurt like crazy. Thankfully, I was able to get it out. But heaven does not have that. Yes?
That happened to me one time.
Yeah? Oh boy, that hurts, doesn't it? Heaven doesn't have any of that. Heaven does not have sadness and grief and mourning. You don't get tired in heaven. And so Jesus left all of that and came here. Where, did you know that when he was a baby, that the king put an order out to have him killed? That's right. And his parents, when Jesus was just a little baby, they had to run from their country and go to another country, to Egypt, to protect him. And so what happened was the king, since he didn't know exactly which baby was Jesus, he issued an order that all the babies under a certain age be killed. That's the kind of world he came into. For us, he took that risk. And so now, what we're talking about now, he touches this guy. And the guy is healed of his leprosy. And for the first time in I don't know how many years, this man had no marks on his skin. If he had fingers missing, they were restored. His body was perfect again. Now, what I did not put on this text is Jesus said, you go to the priest and be inspected. Because they had this system, if somebody got well from this disease, they had to go to some authorities and who could certify that they were okay. And so that's what he did. And I can just, after that, then he must have gone home. And can you imagine walking home and saying, I can't wait to see my wife and get my arms around her. It's been so long. I want to hug my kids. I want to kiss them. I just can't wait. Can you imagine the joy that he had? All because Jesus took the risk of touching him. Well, our little girl, I think everything I learned about school, I learned through Missy. Because she was very vocal, for one thing. It was a common occurrence that we would go to a teacher conference and the teacher would start out by saying, your daughter is very social. And we'd say, that means she talks a lot, doesn't it? And she said, yes. And this one time, and I'm thinking it was third grade, the teacher started, your daughter is very social. And we said, oh, here we go again. And she said, and if we have a new student that comes into our class midterm, I always put them with Missy because she will make them feel welcome. And I thought, That's what we're looking for. That's what we want. Yeah, she's smart, but that's not nearly as important as having a heart like that for people. Then a few years later, Missy's in junior high. And you know what goes on in junior high? There's all these cliques, these groups of friends, and you know, if you're going to be friends with this group, you can't be my friend. And I remember we were talking about this, and she said, Dad, I want to be friends with both of these girls. But one of them tells me that if I'm friends with this other one, then this one won't be a friend with me. And I'm not sure what to do. And as we talked, she finally said, you know what? If they have a problem with each other, that's their problem. I'm going to be friends with both of them. I'm not going to let them do that to me. Isn't that a good way to solve that one? I wouldn't put it this way, but what I was thinking was, okay, if you want to be a jerk, you can be a jerk, but I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm going to do the right thing, be the right kind of person. And so what if there's a group of kids in your class and they push one other student out, they make fun of her? Oh, she's a weirdo. She talks funny. Or, where is she from anyway? She's not from here. Or, why would anybody wear that? What are you going to do? Say, you know what, if I become friends with her, or if I become his friend, then this group of people is not going to be nice to me either. They won't be my friends. What are you going to do? What would Jesus do? That's the big question. He touched the leper. He would. And you know who he would put first? That's right. The one that gets pushed away by everybody else. Would you preach next Sunday? You got this down. I'm serious. I really appreciate it. I see something good going on. And so, do you know that the Bible says that it was through Jesus that the universe was created? Colossians chapter 1, verses 16 through about 20. It's emphasizing who this Jesus is. And it says, by him all things were made, and all things hold together. And so, we're not talking about just a normal guy. We're talking about the Lord of the universe. And when he is on the earth in human form, this is what he does for people who are excluded from the rest of people. He goes to them first. Wow. You know, if we will do what Jesus does, then there will not be one person in our class in school. There will not be one person in our neighborhood. There will not be one person in our workplace that is kind of an oddball, that doesn't fit in with everybody else, that looks different or talks different, or has some kind of a disability that makes them kind of awkward. There will not be one person like that who doesn't have a friend, because we'll be their friend. There will not be one person in our area like that that feels that nobody cares about them, because we will. And not just because the preacher said to do it, because we look at Jesus and we say, wow, that's what I need to be like. Because in a very real sense, I am that person. I'm that person that's excluded. All of you guys are going to grow up, and you'll eventually go through high school, and you'll graduate from high school. And then a few years later, you're going to get a letter in the mail saying we're having a 10-year reunion. And And you'll think, do I want to go to that? And you're going to immediately be thinking this, you know what? I had a few friends. I didn't fit in with a lot of those people. I'm not sure I even want to see them. And maybe you won't go to that one. And then 10 years later, you're going to get another invitation to the 20-year reunion. And by that time, things have changed a little bit. Because already some of your classmates have died. Or you get to like Brenda and mine. She just celebrated her 50th high school reunion. I'm sorry, I told that on you, honey. Now everybody knows she's more than 50. Graduated from high school when she was 2 years old. And by now, it's a reunion of survivors. Things are different. Oh, some of the old personalities are still there. But people have learned and matured, they've been through the struggles of life, and suddenly, well not suddenly, but over time, some of the silly things that separated people from each other don't mean anything anymore. And now they're grateful to see each other and be around each other. Oh, that we can learn that when we're young. Right. And the best way to learn that is to say, okay, God, if you show us how we're supposed to live, we know that our lives will be the best they can be. And that we'll make the best impact on this world that we can do. Now, wouldn't it be great if you actually had the power to heal leprosy or cancer, heart disease? I'll tell you what, in a very real sense, you can do something better than that. You can heal that awful illness of people feeling that they're excluded, that they're not cared for, that they are odd, that they are on the outside. Because when you go into your workplace, into your home, into your classroom, you are representing Jesus. And so make up your mind to do the right thing every single time. And don't worry about the results of it. You let God take care of the results. And you're going to come away from that experience feeling like you've accomplished something worthwhile and that you were worthwhile.
Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. Little ones to him belong, they are weak, but he is strong. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. My God is so big, so strong, and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do. My God is so big, so strong, and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do. The mountains are his, the rivers are his, the stars are his handiwork too. My God is so big, so strong, and so mighty, there's nothing my God cannot do.